Hi guys. So we learned in 6.1 about adding and subtracting polynomials. And now 6.2 we're going to get into multiplying them. So we're going to do adding, subtracting, or we've done adding, subtracting, we're going to do multiplying, and then we're going to get into dividing, but they don't call it dividing with polynomials, they call it factoring. Okay, so today though we're only focusing on multiplying. So we're going to set up using boxes, kind of similar to Punnett squares if you are familiar with biology and the Punnett squares. If not, I'll just show you what I mean by that. But you're going to figure out how many boxes you need. So for this, we have one thing here. So we need one row. Okay, so I made one row. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 different terms here. So now I need 4 different columns. Okay, so I'm just going to break this up into 4 columns. Okay, and then you're going to fill in the outside of your boxes. So this one thing is going to go over here, 2x to the third. And then these 4 things are going to go above each column. So x to the third, 3x to the second, negative 2x, and positive 5. Okay, each thing gets its own column. And now what you're going to do is you're going to use this rule. You're going to multiply the big numbers, meaning the coefficients, the big numbers in front. So like the 2 here, or the 3, or if it's missing a number, you can put in a 1. So every letter should have a coefficient and an exponent. If it doesn't, it's automatically a 1. So like here, there's no coefficient, so we know it's a 1 and we can put that in there. It has an exponent. This one has a coefficient and an exponent. This letter has a coefficient but no exponent, so we can add the 1 there. And then there's no letter at all, so there's no reason to add any 1s there. Okay? So make sure all of your letters have a coefficient, which you're going to multiply. And then you're going to add the small numbers, meaning add the small, tiny exponents. Okay? So we're going to fill in our box kind of like you did when you learned how to multiply. These two go in here to this box, and you're going to multiply. 2 times 1 is 2. So multiply the big numbers, multiply the coefficients. And now we're going to add the small exponents. 3 plus 3 is 6. So it becomes 2x to the 6th. Okay? Do the next one. 2 times 3 is 6. Make sure you're multiplying the big coefficients and you're adding the small exponents. 3 plus 2 is 5. Again, multiplying the big coefficients in front. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. And we're adding the small exponents. 3 plus 1, because it wasn't there, we had to add it. 3 plus 1 is 4. And then the last one, 2 times 5 is 10, and there's only an x to the third. There's nothing to add over here, so we just keep x to the third. Just rewrite that. And so now this is your answer in blue, and you can rewrite it if you'd like. 2x to the 6th, that's a plus 6x to the 5th, minus 4x to the 4th, and positive or plus 10x to the 3rd. And notice it goes 6, 5, 4, 3. It should always go down in degrees. So that's called the degree. So like, kind of like first degree murder, or if you had a burn, it was like a 3rd degree burn on your skin. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about 6th degree, 5th degree, 4th, 3rd. Okay, so it's going down always. So that's the first way. That's simple. We only had a 1 by 4 box. Most of the time, we're going to have a 2 by 2 box or maybe a 3 by 2 box. But for right now, that's going to get you by with the 1 by 4 or like a 1 by 3. I'll pause the video for a second and then we'll look at example 2, which is going to be a 2 by 2 box. Okay, so for example 2, we're going to still do this box. We're still multiplying polynomials. We know that we're multiplying because there's the parentheses. Anytime you see parentheses, just know it's multiplication. So I have 2 things here. So when I make my box, I want to make 2 rows. Oops. Leave yourself a little room right here because you're going to be writing above it. So you want to make your box maybe a little farther down. Okay, so I know I have two things here, so I'm going to make 2 rows, x minus 4, so x and a minus 4. And I have 2 things here, so I'm going to make 2 columns. So I have a 2 by 2, so I have a 2 by 2 box. 3x goes in the first column, and plus 2 goes above the second column. So I have a 2 by 2 now. Okay, and it doesn't matter which one's which. If you're familiar with biology and doing this with different genes to figure out maybe what the baby has or the plant is going to be like. I don't know what you've learned in biology with Punnett squares, but it doesn't matter if the mom's on top or the dad and the mom. They're still going to make the same baby, right? Okay. Same thing with this. It doesn't matter which one's on top and which one's on the side, but you just want to make sure you do have the right symbols. So if it's negative or positive, you want to make sure you have that. So now before I start, you don't have to do this if you can remember the imaginary ones, but this is kind of a nice way to remember. Before you start, every letter, which we call a variable, every variable should have a coefficient out in front and an exponent. And if it doesn't, you need to put a 1 there. No letter to worry about. This one has a coefficient, but no exponent, and no letter, no variable to worry about. So now we've got all the imaginary ones in there. Now remember, your rule is, and you might want to write this down, multiply the big number, the coefficient, and add the small number, which is the exponent. And I'm saying by size, okay? So I'm not talking about which one's the bigger number or which one's the smaller number. I'm talking about this being bigger than that number because of size, okay? So, and I normally would write that down, I just don't have a lot of room. So make sure you're multiplying the coefficient and you're adding the exponent. So 1 times 3, these are going to go here, these are going to go here, these are going to go here, and these are going to go here. Just like you filled in when you were in 3rd grade and you were learning how to multiply and you filled in all your multiplication tables. Same thing. So 1 times 3, make sure you're multiplying. 1 times 3 is 3, and you're adding the exponents. 1 plus 1 is 2. X times x is x squared, okay? 1 times 2 is 2. And we don't have any x over here to add with this x, so we just keep it an x. And if you want, you can put the little 1 here, but it's not really necessary at this point anymore. We usually just write 2x. We don't write 2x to the first. So you can just get rid of the imaginary 1 at this point. Now down here, it's negative 4 times 3 going in here, which is negative 12. And again, we just have an x here, but not an x here to add to it, so we're just going to drop that x down. And we don't need the 1 anymore because it's just kind of extra at this point. All the imaginary ones are going to be imaginary in your final answer. They're just kind of there for if you need it during the problem while you're working with it. And then this one's just negative 4 times 2, which is negative 8, and there's no letters. So it's just a number there, no variable at all. Now, the nice thing about doing this, there are other methods. There's a FOIL method if you've ever learned that. But this is a great method because now you know you're done. Once all your boxes are filled in, you know that you've tried all the combinations. And now what the nice thing is the diagonals are going to be buddies a lot of times. Okay, not every time, but I would say about 95% of the time, the diagonals are going to go together. So think back to section 6.1. X squared goes with x squared and it stays x squared. X goes with x and it stays x. And no x goes with no x and it stays no x. We're still going to do that same rule. That has not changed. So if I look from all 4 things, only one of them have an x squared. So 3x squared doesn't have a buddy to buddy up. So I'm just going to rewrite that. But these 2 are buddies. X goes with x and it's going to stay in x, just like with the lesson previous to this with section 6.1. Okay. So you're going to add, and you might want to write yourself a note, you're going to add the diagonals, and it doesn't matter the order. Negative 12 plus 2 is negative 10, and it stays in x. X goes with x, and it stays in x. Or you can do it the other way. 2 plus a negative 12. It's still negative 10, okay? It doesn't matter. How I think of it is I think of, I borrow $12, and I only pay back 2, so I still owe 10. I'm negative 10. X goes with x and it stays in x, just like section 6.1. And then the last one, there's nothing to buddy up with that one because it's just a number, no letter. So we just leave it like that. If there was 2 of them, we'd buddy them up and we'd add them the same way. But for this, most of the time, this is going to be by itself. This is going to be by itself. And this middle term is going to be these 2 added together. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions with that. And then we're going to move on to another example. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, so this is actually a checkpoint. So go ahead and pause the video at this point. This is the example. And if you're a little stuck, I've got you set up. It's actually a 1 by 2. So 1 row, 2 columns. You're going to put this x in front, the 7x squared, and then the plus 4. And if you know how to do this at this point, go ahead and pause the video, try it on your own, and come back and see if you got it correct. If you're still a little stuck, you can keep following along. Before you start, you're going to want to make sure that every letter has a coefficient out in front and a little tiny exponent up on top. This letter already has a coefficient and an exponent, so we're good. And this one doesn't have any letters at all, so we don't have to worry about a coefficient or exponent. And now again, if that's helped you and you remember, and that's kind of jogged your memory and you know what to do, go ahead and pause the video, try it on your own. Okay, if not, keep watching. So now you're going to multiply the big coefficients and add the small exponents. 1 times 7 is 7. Add the small exponents. 1 plus 2 is 3. Okay? 1 times 4 is 4. And then there's an x here, but no x here, so we just keep it, nothing to add to it. And we don't need the 1 anymore. Although you can put it, it's just not necessary. And so now these 2 don't go together. X to the third doesn't go with x. So we just keep them separate. So 7x to the third, and that's a plus because it's a positive 4x. And that's your answer. So you do your work here in the boxes, but make sure you always answer it fully. Okay, basically the 2 went up to a 3 and the no x went up to an x. Okay, you took this x and you basically just distributed it through. So in fact, with these, if you prefer the distributed property, you can totally use the distributed property instead. Now we're going to be looking at a 2 by 2 box. So we'll have a checkpoint with a 2 by 2 box in just a second. Okay, so here's another checkpoint. We've got a plus 3 times 2a plus 1. So we've got 2 things here and 2 things here. So I know it's going to be a 2 by 2 box. So at this point, if you think you're good, go ahead and pause the video, try it on your own, and then come back and watch me do it. If you're a little stuck, keep watching. So a plus 3. So I'm going to do a plus 3. And it doesn't matter which one I do. Okay, I could have put the a plus 3 over here. Doesn't really matter. And then 2a plus 1. 2a plus 1. Okay, it doesn't matter which one's in which. It's all going to give you the same answer at the end. So if you have already done this and you've already tried it before watching the video and yours is a little flip-flop, that's okay. We'll all get the same answer at the end. Before you start, if you prefer, you can make sure you put all your imaginary ones in. So every letter should have a coefficient out in front and a little exponent. If there's no letter, don't worry about it. This letter has a coefficient, but it's missing the exponent. And then this one doesn't have a letter at all, so we don't need to worry about that. Once you've done this enough, you'll start to remember the imaginary ones and you won't have to waste time putting them down. But while you're first learning it, put the ones in there to remind you. But eventually, you'll start remembering that 2 times nothing, you just would leave it as a 2, okay? But 2 times 1, if that's more helpful, it's 2. And same thing with here. A times a, you'll start to learn it's just a squared. But with the ones here, it's easy. 1 plus 1, you're adding to make 2. Okay? 2 times 3 is 6. Keep the a. 1 times 1 is 1. Keep the a. And 1 times 3 goes here, and it's just 3. No a's. Okay? And now we clean it up. Remember, that's not your answer. This is your work. Your answer is going to be below it. Okay? A lot of times kids like to stop here. This is not the answer that's going to be on the test. There will not be a 6 or a 1a on the test. Okay? They will be combined. So make sure you're combining your like terms. So we've got 2a squared. There's nothing to buddy up with it. So just keep it as 2a squared. The diagonals here are buddies. Remember, a lot of times the diagonals are going to be buddies and we're going to add them. A goes with A and it stays in A. X goes with X and it stays in X, or whatever it is. And you always add 6 plus 1 or 1 plus 6. Doesn't matter the order. Either way, it's going to be a positive 7. And A goes with A and it stays in A. Don't change the A. And then this is just a positive 3 hanging out by itself, so there's nothing to buddy up with it. So this is your answer, and it will be a 7A. You won't see the 6 or the 1. You'll see them combined to make 7 on the answer for the test. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions with that one. And then we're going to move on to a 2x3 box. Same concept, just a little more involved. Okay, now for example 3, same concept. We've got the multiplying with the parentheses. We've got a polynomial and a polynomial, but this polynomial is a little bit bigger. So we've got 1, 2, 3 by 1, 2. So instead of a 2x2 box, we're going to make a 3x2 box. So make your box more of like a rectangle. Make it a little longer. Like that. Okay, still 2 columns. So my 2 columns, and then I'm going to make 3 rows. Or sorry, 2 rows and 3 columns. Or you could have it the other way. You could have it turned the other way. It doesn't really matter. Just make sure that this is 3 things. So that's going to go in the 3 spot. So b squared plus 6b minus 7. And this is 2 things, so or 2 terms. So we're going to put those over here on the 2 rows. 3b and then minus 4. Okay? You could have this completely flipped the other direction, and that would totally be fine. It does not matter. But what this does is it helps us realize that now we have 6 different combinations to worry about. So it keeps you more organized. Okay? So before we start, make sure every letter has a coefficient and an exponent. Make sure every letter has a coefficient and an exponent. This one has a coefficient, but it's missing an exponent. And then these don't have letters at all, so we don't have to worry about those. And then you just fill in the boxes. Once you fill in all 6 boxes, you just, combine your like terms. Okay? So it's no different than when you first start out with maybe Miss G in biology, and you're learning about Punnett squares, and she gives you a 2x2 square, and then she gives you maybe a 3x3 or a 4x4 or a 10x10. It's the same concept, it's just more boxes to fill in. Okay, so make sure you're multiplying the coefficients out in front. 3 times 1, we multiply, 3 times 1 is 3. We add the small little exponents. 1 plus 2 is also 3, but we're adding. Okay, same thing with the next one. 3 times 6, multiply the coefficients, add the exponents. 1 plus 1 is 2. Multiply the coefficients. 3 times negative 7 is negative 21, and just keep the b. You don't need the little 1 anymore at this point. There's no b over here, so you just keep the b. Now you're filling in the next row with this number. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. And then b squared just stays b squared. Just drop it straight down. Don't change it because there's no b to add to it over here. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 24. Just drop down the b. Again, there's nothing to add to it over here. And negative 4 times negative, 2 negatives make a positive. And 4 times 7 is 28. Now, you're not done. Okay, there are buddies here. So start looking at what buddies up. B goes with B and it stays a B. B squared goes with B squared and it stays a B squared. Okay, so out of all of these, my biggest one, that's what we started back in section 6.1. Remember, we always want to start with the biggest one. The biggest one I see is B to the third, but there's no buddies. So just rewrite it. 3B to the third, there's nothing to buddy up. But B squared goes with B squared. See how that diagonal is buddies. So we always add the diagonals. 18b squared minus, you can say minus 4 or you can say plus a negative 4. It doesn't matter, okay? Or you could say negative 4 plus 18. It does not matter the order. My brain personally thinks 18 take away 4, which is 14. Positive 14, and it stays a b squared. B squared goes to b squared and it stays a b squared, just like in section 6.1. However you want to use it, if you need to use a calculator, that's fine too. Okay, B goes with B and it stays a B. So these two are also buddies. They're both B's. you're going to add them. Negative 24 plus negative 21, or negative 21 plus negative 24. And again, it doesn't matter the order. I think of this as I owe $24 and then I borrow another 21. So not only do I owe the 24, but now I'm farther into debt. So I'm going to add the two together and make it negative because I'm farther into debt. So I still owe money, so I'm negative. 24 plus 21 is 45, and it stays a B. Okay? And then there's no B here, so just write plus 28. There's nothing to buddy up with. You'll notice it goes B to the third, B to the second, B to the first, even though it's imaginary, and no B at all, or B to the 0, okay? Even though that's also imaginary. Okay, so I'm going to give you one more, I think. Yes, I got one more for you, and then I think we'll be good. Okay, last one. This is another checkpoint, so go ahead and pause the video right now. Copy this down. Try this on your own. Make sure, if you're not already, that you are taking notes, okay? This math is not easy, especially when you're not taking notes and trying to write it down yourself, okay? So if you need, notes, please let me know, or paper, please let me know, and I can help you with that. But make sure you are actually trying these on your own and not just watching me do it. I could watch somebody do something a million times, but until I learn to actually do it on my own, it's a lot different. No different than trying to shoot a basketball. If I'm watching somebody play basketball 100 times, does that make me going to be any better at basketball? No, I have to grab the ball, do the stuff, do the work, practice, and get better at it on my own, okay? They might be able to give me pointers, but until I actually do the work on my own, I'm not going to get any better. So same thing with math, okay? So make sure if you're not already, you're taking notes. So at this time, if you think you're good, go ahead and try this and pause the video. If you're still a little confused, you got one more shot at it here. This is 1, 2, 3, and then 2. So I know I need a 3 by 2 box. So I'm kind of making a rectangle. I'm making my 3 columns and my 2 rows. Okay, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, I messed up. It's totally fine. So now you're going to fill in your things. So I've got 2x squared, 5x, and you can put the plus if you want, and then the minus 1. And that's going to become a negative 1. And then 4x over here, and a negative 3. The minus 3 becomes the negative 3. And now you're going to fill them in. And if you need to go back and put in the little imaginary ones, go ahead and do that. So we've got a little imaginary one there and a little imaginary one there. Okay? And if you can do it without that, that's fine too. So now you're going to do 4 times 2 is 8. And you're going to add 1 plus 2 is 3. 4 times 5 is 20. And you're going to add 1 plus 1 is 2. So you're multiplying the coefficients and adding the exponents. It's kind of like patting your head and rubbing your belly at the same time. I don't know. Am I doing it? I'm doing it. So, it takes practice to try to do 2 things at once, but make sure you're multiplying the coefficients and adding the exponents. Okay? 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. Keep the x. Fill in the second row. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6, and just drop down that x squared since there's nothing over here to add to it. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Drop down the x. We don't need the little 1 anymore. And a negative times a negative is going to be a positive. 3 times 1 is 3. And again, look at your diagonals because chances are they are probably buddies. So out of all of this, I see only one thing with an x to the third. So I'm just going to keep that 8x to the third since there's nothing to buddy up with it. But x squared goes with x squared, and it stays x squared, just like in section 6.1. So x squared goes with x squared, and they happen to be diagonal buddies. Negative 6 plus 20, or 20 take away 6, doesn't matter. I think of 20 take away 6, which is 14, positive 14, and it stays x squared. X squared goes with x squared, and it stays x squared. X goes with x, and it's going to stay in x. Remember, you're adding. Negative 15 plus negative 4, or negative 4 plus 15. Either way, You borrow $15 and you borrow another $4. So you're more negative. You owe somebody even more money, more than the 15. Now you owe them 4 more. So now you owe them 19. So it's negative because you owe them more. And then this one's just hanging out by itself, nothing to buddy up with because it's the only one that doesn't have a letter. All the other things have a letter so that they can't be buddied up. So that is your answer. So make sure you don't just stop here. The blue part down here is your actual answer. So now you should be able to do the section 6.2 assignment. If you have any questions, please reach out to me and let me know so I can help you. And then we'll be moving on to section 6.3 soon.